For now, direct realism is essentially on the floor because we have attacked it first with the illusion argument and second with the hallucination argument. So we're going to start to look for a different theory. And this is going to be the theory that we're going to explore in this lesson, which is the idea of sense-data theory of perception. And specifically, we're going to recap on really what we did to direct realism. We're going to explain what sense-data theory of perception is, and then we're going to move on to the indirect realism in the next lesson. So, as an introduction, we've already explored the intuitive openness to the world notion of perception. That's the idea of direct realism, that I'm perceiving an object directly and there's a causal link between the two. Okay, so this is really the idea that, I've just explained what that is, okay. We have also seen that this view might not be very convincing because of the hallucination and the illusion arguments. We've explained those arguments in the last lesson, which is the idea that if we have hallucinations and illusions and we can't distinguish between something real and something that is an hallucination or an illusion, then how can we, reliably say that there is a connection between a physical object and our mind and our mind itself, okay? So what all the theories can we use to explain perception if we can't use direct realism? Well, one is called the sense-data theory of perception. Now, the sense-data theory of perception suggests that there exists some kind of sense data, okay, and that these are mind-dependent mental entities. So they depend on the existence of a brain or a mind. So what we mean here is that they depend on their existence for something to go on in someone's mind. So according to sense data theory of perception, when we have a perception of something like this water bottle, we're not actually perceiving the water bottle directly. We're perceiving some kind of sense data. When I perceive an object in the real world, there isn't a connection between me and the real world. There's a connection between me and the sense data of that object. So equally, when I'm perceiving a hallucination or an illusion, I'm just perceiving the sense data of a hallucination and the sense data of an illusion. I'm not perceiving the actual object, which is how it gets around the illusion argument and the hallucination argument, because it could just all be chalked up to the same kind of thing. Oh, it's all just sense data. So yeah, this idea of sense data perception is describing just a relationship between things within our mind. Okay, now we've closed off our mind to mind-independent objects. We're just talking about things within the mind itself. So for something to be that particular perception, this exact perception of a water bottle that I'm having, okay, it does not rely on anything from the outside world. It doesn't actually rely on any physical water bottle or object. Okay, it relies on a differentiation of the sense data. So as you may have already realized, a consequence of this sense data view is that the external world doesn't actually have to have any kind of relation to our perceptual states. Okay, there doesn't need to be any connection between the external world and our phenomenological understanding of perception. So we have a line through our arrow here, okay, between A to O. There is no perception. Okay, so that's effectively it. That's the view that's the view we're going to be looking at. And in the next lesson, we're going to look at indirect realism, which is a view of sense data theory that states that we are not directly seeing an object when we perceive it, but what we're doing is we're indirectly perceiving its sense data. So the sense data has some kind of link with the real world, but our perception doesn't. So as a lesson task, I want you to think about these things. So what do you think of the sense data theory? Do you think it's convincing? Is there anything wrong with the sense data theory? Is there anything that you would change? Any objections to it? There's more reading in detail on sense data theory in the project section. We're going to talk about it in a lot more detail in the next lesson because we're going to link it to indirect realism. And if you still feel like you don't understand sense data theory, make sure you ask a question in the discussion section down below. So finally, in the next lesson, we're going to look at indirect realism.